Welcome back to the Content That Grows podcast. I'm your host, Nate Turner. Today, we're going to be talking about the power of a strong relationship between product and marketing in product-led growth companies. Joining me to talk about this today is Darren Chait. Darren currently leads growth on Calendly's marketing team after its 2022 acquisition of Hugo, which he co-founded. Hugo was a leading meeting workflow solution powering meetings for tens of thousands of customers backed by Google, Slack, and Atlassian. With a background in both marketing and product, Darren is passionate about the craft of product-led growth and the strategy of growing a business through self-serve user experiences. Welcome to the podcast, Darren. Excited to chat with you about this today.
Thanks, Nate. Likewise, one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, so I think it's great. We've done quite a bit of different product-led growth topics here, and I think that this is a really important one, that maybe I think it's talked about a fair amount, but can be overlooked in many cases as kind of a make or break aspect of the entire PLG go-to-market motion is just like the relationship and the way these teams work together. So I would love just to start kind of like being at Calendly, been there a couple of years since acquisition, and like seeing a lot there. Just like, what are some of the core things that Calendly gets right with the relationship between product and marketing?
Totally. So Calendly is a remarkable business. We're probably all familiar with Calendly as, being the creator of the scheduling link, if you like, 11 plus years ago. And what's blown me away, I guess, that I think about all the time, in terms of what we're lucky to have with the product marketing relationship here, is it looks really different to traditional product marketing. So, by the book, if you like, product marketing's job is to work with product, ideally before they build, to scope out the ideal customer persona, the problem they're solving, how we're going to solve for it, maybe the positioning. We all love like the Amazon model of write the press release before you build it. So there's that aspect. Product then disappears for weeks or months, years even, and they're going to go and do the research and talk to customers, to run the test designs, build, QA, implement, get ready to ship, and then product marketing comes back in and is ready to run the release. So now product marketing is saying, okay, how are we going to educate and drive adoption and so on. When you think about growth, it's really different in that it's got to be continuously integrated. The decisions we're making along the way to drive growth outcomes in a self-serve way, as we do in a PLG business, means that partnership exists all the way through that journey. The design of the product or the feature or even the button, the CTA, is a very tightly coupled product and marketing decision. The reaction from folks when you're testing designs, and then of course what it actually does and how it works, the behaviors, the data. You kind of stay partners the whole way through, rather than sort of just being there to drive adoption and what a traditional product marketer may do in other organizations.
No, I totally agree. So is that done like primarily through meetings, or like a squad model, or how does that work at Calendly that you actually do maintain that versus work together, product goes off, and then kind of come back for launch?
Yeah, so our product marketing team, headed by one of my colleagues, has PMMs who are allocated to parts of the product or to squads. So if I work on monetization as a PMM, I'm deeply integrated to that squad. I'm in their weekly meetings. I'm a member of that team, and I'm hearing what they're saying. I can jump in. I can be involved. I can help make those decisions. It's not a service bureau. All right, time to go bring in marketing or anything like that. And that works really well for us.
Yeah, cool. So I guess, for a lot of folks that may not have that model, or maybe light on product marketing folks, or a number of reasons that they don't actually have a good relationship between product and marketing, or maybe there's a good relationship but just not good communication and collaboration. Like, do you have any sort of practical steps that you would recommend as like just to go from 0 to 1, for a company trying to get better there?
Look, aside from the generic advice, which I'll avoid, on building good cross-functional relationships, which obviously helps, I think it comes down to what the role of that product squad or that product team or even that product feature is, and alignment on that. So if I'm a product manager and my job is to deliver on the product roadmap and get this feature out the door, and get people to use it, I'm going to have one perspective, and then the marketer is going to come in and they're going to have a different goal because they don't. It's not their job to ship the feature, right, or even to necessarily drive adoption. But if we both have a goal to improve retention of this, or get users to spend more time in the app, or like upper level at a business goal, the dynamic's really different because we're kind of in this together. Like, look, as a PM, I have different tools. I have engineers, I have designers. I can go and solve it this way. As a marketer, I don't have that, but I've got different tools again. I can distribute, I can tell a story, I can position it this way. I have other channels that we own. And it kind of becomes this really healthy partnership where, well, all of this together, me via email and storytelling and whatever other channels, as a marketer, is solving stickiness that way while you're building this to solve it that way, and then what's the net result? And that's the best way, in my view, to build that relationship, that cross-functional relationship from scratch.
Yeah, cool. I think it's helpful, and it's interesting because I think probably more widely discussed, across companies and on panels at conferences and all kinds of other stuff is the relationship between sales and marketing. And I feel like one of the number one keys to that is having aligned goals, not having marketing going after MQLs and sales going after revenue, but like aligning there.
Right.
So that makes a ton of sense that you're saying whatever that user metric is or whatever, like having some of those shared goals helps.
And that's the other reason you see the advent of like growth squads and talking about growth, because growth is a good word, because growth is a goal. Obviously, we all want to grow, and it's not function specific. Like if I told you that I work on growth at Calendly, you have to ask, you don't even know where I sit. You don't know my org chart, but you do know what I'm focused on. So I like growth as a concept for that reason. It breaks down those barriers. It aligns on a goal, and it forces great collaboration.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think there's so many things there. You mentioned the like product manager versus a PMK having different tools and whatnot, and I in that growth team, then I think there becomes some interesting stuff. Whether it's like something like a intercom type of tool where you have like in-app chat or in-app messaging type of stuff, and you have like being smart about the way the design is of like where you kind of get like a paywall or like an upgrade bump, where you kind of see like, oh, you don't have access to that. Like that's very much marketing inside the product. There's a lot of things there that really can kind of work together. Yeah,
it's so tightly coupled now. Exactly.
Yeah. Yep. Well, let's maybe pull ourselves out of maybe a little bit outside the product and maybe specifically the web application, and into more of like the website and the role that that plays for PLG companies. I think that would be helpful, just kind of do that. Like, how do you see that at Calendly? What does that look like for you today in terms of like, how much product is even involved or thinking about, or, the growth team, the website and how that all ties together from a PLG standpoint?
Yeah, great question. My team's responsible for the Calendly.com, the website, and I love it. I think it's like it's a product in itself, and there's so much to a website. The role of the website, particularly in a PLG company. Why in a PLG company? Because if in a more sales-led company, the job of the website is to generate leads, but it's not to sell. Right? It's up to the account executives or the SDRs to continue selling. We just got to pique their interest to get them to click to talk to sales. In a PLG company, the website has to do everything. We've got to pique their interest to get them going. We have to educate them about the product. We have to drive them to sign up. And the way in which we do that informs what happens after sign up. If we mislead them, if in the negative sense. But if their expectations and preconceptions of the product are wrong, they're not going to activate, they're not going to convert, and so on. So we have to be very the way we position the product and what's going to happen, what you expect, and so on the website totally influence the rest of our funnel. We actually goal ourselves now towards activating signups, or it's a bit far removed because we have a trial, but sometimes converting signups too. It's not as good a leading indicator because it takes at least 2 weeks to get that feedback loop as we experiment. But it just shows how important it is not to just be driving, kicking signups over the fence, especially at our volume. So
Right.
that's one. The other interesting thing that we've observed is the number of users that come to Calendly.com to come to the website. So we have millions of unique visitors to our website every month, and just over a third of them are existing users. And that's kind of interesting because, and I'm not talking about just to click the login button. People who are actually spending time somewhere on the site. Now, some of it's obvious, like pricing page and that, but others are looking at features on the website, even though they could adopt them or upgrade to them if they don't have them, or just try them out in app. And that's a totally interesting perspective if you think that we design a website with the goal of driving signups or sales leads, but a
Correct.
large proportion of our website visitors are already users.
Yeah.
So is it the right content? Well, I mean, the CTAs are wrong, right? Having sign up everywhere.
Yeah.
So we've taken a different approach here, which is we have personalized or logged in versions of our website. If you're logged in, the content's really different. We drive activation and conversion behavior. So we have like checklists and things. The pricing page shows what plan you're on, and it's much more of an upgrade play.
Yeah.
All the CTAs are different. It's all about getting in touch, talking to support, finding helpful content,
Yeah.
or sales if it's not there's an upgrade play. And small insight that was really new to me, to be honest. I've never really worked anywhere before where we've had to think about users on a marketing website. And again, that is just so tightly coupled with product, the activation steps, the goals, where they're at. And really, it's just another product touch point as users are jumping between, mobile apps, web apps, and the website.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I experienced that a good amount at Sprout, where we had a little over 20,000 companies when I left, but um, certainly multi-user within those company accounts. So between that and free signups, like, it was 60 to 80,000 people, essentially, and so definitely encountered quite a bit of that. And it is something um, that is sort of a small percentage of companies really do get to experience, when you think about, like, not many people get to a size where it's a noticeable amount of people doing that, like from a customer marketing and retention standpoint. Um, but then also, a large chunk of companies, they're just their product or the way their business works doesn't function that way either. So it does kind of whittle down into a pretty small percentage of companies that have that opportunity, and so there aren't nearly as many, to your point, like, think best practices and standards around doing that well. But it sounds like you got some really cool stuff going for that.
Yeah, the lesson from that, in my view, isn't that everyone should go and ship a logged-in user experience. It depends on your business and so on. But what I take from that is look at who's visiting your site, where they are in the journey, what they know about you. There's so many great personalization options out there. We do a lot of personalization on a whole lot of factors, but not just industry or company size or country and the obvious stuff, if you like. Even down to like a visit number. So we store the how many times you visited in a 30-day rolling period, and the content should change. If you keep coming back, great, that shows intent. But
Yeah.
the same thing over and over again isn't going to change your conversion decision. So now we can start to personalize based on those factors as well. So I think that's the main takeaway for almost everyone with your website, when to think about personalization and just to put yourself in the shoes of that visitor.
Yeah.
It might be logged in, logged out, but it could just be someone who's very familiar or unfamiliar, or industries and company size and other things too.
Yep. Yeah. And I two things I would add to that. One is, um, thinking about kind of like level of sophistication, I think, can be helpful. So to your point, I think a lot of content that gets created is very focused on, this is the pain point that someone has prior to using our product. And so if you're really like thinking about sophistication, then they solve that by starting to use your product ideally, and then but then there are still like the next level things. Maybe it's like reporting to leadership, or new growth challenges, or that kind of stuff, where making sure you're creating content that's solving sort of those existing customer pain points, and more advanced stuff that can then, I think, kind of contribute to that. And the other is like just understanding better, just not making assumptions. We had a guest on our site that, or on the podcast, that talked about how they had competitor pages, so their product versus another, and they realized through a survey that the number one competitor was actually people using email and PDFs, versus like actually using one of the other tools. And so like, some of that just like messaging shift too. But I think, yeah, in terms of your point on like customer marketing and all that stuff, like there, a lot of websites do focus a bit on the pain points and solutions that are focused on getting people into the product and not necessarily the staying in the product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, in terms of content, so obviously you've only been at Calendly for a couple of years because of the acquisition, but you were obviously co-founded and leading a company prior to that. Um, I think like the shifting of the content strategy. So we talked about this a little bit before recording. Just kind of curious, like with Calendly and just the growth of the product and just the strength of the brand and everything, like what is that kind of done for the content strategy with the team?
Totally. It's funny, I came from Hugo, a much smaller business, and we had a lot of success with content, like, organic content, driving our growth. So naturally, when you come to Calendly, like we all do, we're all guilty of, we have our playbook and we're ready to have the same successes again. And I was hit by the reality that working in a company with a big brand has very different dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
We see tons of branded search where people search for Calendly, and get to us, and there's no point ranking for certain keywords because the affiliation's there. I don't need to worry about people searching for scheduling links and not even knowing about Calendly. It's just not a problem.
Right.
And Yeah, well, we should talk about. I'd like to actually talk about how a strong brand impacts content and growth decisions in a second, because it's a blessing and a curse. But before I get to that, um, there's been a big shift, and as I'm seeing over the last 4 or 5 years with content, and it's been accelerated in the last 12 months, particularly with AI and the LLMs and everything we can do to create content and so on, and the way we get answers. So one is SEO strategy, as we know, is a lot more real now, if I can say that. So, I grew up in a marketing generation where we were into, keyword stuffing, backlinks,
Yeah.
and playing that game. And that's just becoming less and less relevant because search engines are getting smarter, users are getting smarter, and there's so many more ways now to surface content.
Yeah.
So it's less about being strategic in that way and more about what question, how can I be helpful genuinely? Like, how can I actually be helpful here? Um, and that gets the best outcomes. Not me saying, how can I drive revenue for my business first? And, I'll say and pretend to be helpful however I can to drive that outcome. It doesn't work. And we're learning that now. So that's one. Two, and we touched on it a little bit before, I guess, based on stage of the buyer journey. But what used to be bottom of the funnel is often now top of the funnel. So
Mm.
at Calendly, some of
Yeah.
our very high performing keywords are things like, how do I embed scheduling onto my website? And the content that performs well for that keyword, honestly, are like almost like help center docs. Like, cool. So Calendly, there's 4 ways to embed it. You copy this bit of, JavaScript and you drop it in and then it'll pop up like this. And then
Yep.
users can do that. And your dog walking business is up and running to book 10 dogs at a time and accept payments via PayPal.
Yep.
And, if you look at that traditionally, you'd be like, but they don't even know what Calendly is. Like, we need to talk about why scheduling is the way to go, and
Right.
how you can run a business based on scheduling and those sorts of things, and then get to how our product solves for it, and then get to this is how you actually implement it technically. And it doesn't work like that anymore. because again, back to my first point of being genuinely helpful. I want to understand how this works. I don't cut the marketing crap that's leading me along the way. I want to solve a problem. How do you solve it? So that's a sign of the times, the trends, the sophistication of the audience, and so on. And then the third, which is an obvious one, I think, to most other marketers, is just the changing mediums. Obviously, long form content to video to short forms, PDF ebooks to ungated dynamic pages that deliver long form content in a really visual, engaging way. Like that whole world has changed dramatically too. And again, if you're not delivering content in the way that people who you're delivering it for want to consume it, it won't rank. So you won't get the traffic. And even if it does, it's not going to convert. So there's a really big shift going on. And Calendly, for a company that's 11 years old and more and more and more PLG focused, we need to, we're continuously iterating and trying to turn corners there as to what's next.
Yeah. I think that's great. I think it's a great summary of kind of those three big factors, and just totally agree. I mean, I think there's so many things across, like you said, creating content for the, in the format where it's most helpful and people want to consume it. And certainly the era of gaming search engines for results, is far gone. And I think even more so now, I think the what you're saying about like the way SEO works now versus in the past, also kind of converging with, the private data privacy and like getting rid of cookies and all this stuff kind of converging together, has definitely, I think, removed a lot of the tricks and stuff. And we've talked about that a bit on this podcast of like some of the things that you could easily do and then very easily show to leadership. Leadership's now having to kind of understand a less attributable world, and just back to being helpful, really understanding what people need, and solving those problems for them. So, but yeah, let's make sure we touch on like the brand impact. So like you said, Calendly certainly has a very strong brand, and is a product that's been around for a long time. So yeah, like how does a strong brand impact, some of the overall like content and growth decisions and just any other general impact?
Yeah, look, coming from a startup, it's a dream. It's really nice. Obviously, having working for a household name, where we've got that recognition. You have you're starting, a level ahead. We don't have to worry about volume and awareness, and that we have to worry about converting. I think what's interesting though is the challenges of a big brand. It's not all smooth sailing. Calendly, when it was founded in 2013, was first to market with a scheduling link. So, we can save the back and forth, rather than the 7 emails and, the tons of time it's going to take. Like, hey, do any of these times too. And you can click, you can book it in your time zone. I can accept payments and do all sorts of stuff, have complex availability logic that decides who sees what time, all of that great stuff. And you book your meeting, and we've saved all that time. Awesome. And that's what Calendly is known for. In 2024, that's not where Calendly ultimately has bigger organizational impact and impact on teams and that. It's really with what we call like scheduling workflows, or scheduling automation rather. We have workflows that can, as a meetings book, they can do these things. We have collaborative scheduling, which might be with colleagues. It might round robin between us. It might need 2 or 3 of us. Yep. We have routing products on your website where you book time. We can, based on rules in a form, we can decide who that gets routed to. Yep. So for demos and things like that, for sales. Anyway, there's a whole list of these great features. And that's Calendly's business ultimately. So as scheduling links are somewhat commoditized, obviously not always to the same quality and feature set, but there's lots of ways I can solve for that back and forth of scheduling now. That's our business. That's how we make money. So as a marketer, here I am trying to break. It's great that you're here, and thank you for knowing about Calendly and for coming straight to calendly.com or searching for a branded keyword. Mm-hmm. But how do I re-educate you quickly? Yep. And open up, your mind to what Calendly actually is in terms of scheduling automation, and that's a challenge. Actually, we've used over the years, like taglines, like more than a scheduling link or not just a scheduling link, to try and reset that a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's tricky. So big brand, blessing and a curse, definitely. From an SEO and content standpoint, yes, we have the domain authority. All of that certainly helps.
Yeah.
But same challenge. We have to create content that educates.
Yeah. Some re-education for sure. Yeah. Cool. Well, lastly, I think on this topic, I would love to understand, product-led content is another thing we've talked about quite a bit, on this podcast as well as on our blog. And there's a lot of stuff that comes with that, and I think one of the things, kind of tying back to the beginning of the conversation around the relationship between marketing and product, it's just really making sure that that's tight, like describing it correctly and deeply understanding what the product does and how people are using it and all that stuff. So how do your teams ensure like product-led content is closely aligned with your product and the end user needs and behaviors?
Yeah, great question. Similar principles, very current. I do a lot of work on our first-time user experience, so
Okay.
I sit in a cross-functional squad with design, product managers, engineers, data analysts, and then obviously product marketers. And we talk about this all the time. A getting started guide in Calendly, for example. We have video content. We have messaging that helps you take certain activation actions to make you more successful at Calendly. And it's back to that same principle, which is this squad exists to improve a certain metric or experience. In that case, we want to improve the first time user experience to impact certain activation metrics we have. What skills, knowledge, and tools or channels do I have available to me? So when we're sitting there, products or design saying, well, hey, if we made the UX of that a little bit more intuitive, people may discover the need to take this action. I'm sitting there going, well, or one of my colleagues is sitting there going, sure, but why would I do that? There's no value proposition to take that action. Mm-hmm. I know it makes sense. I know it's obvious now, the great design impact, but tell me why. So, and then we might propose, what if we had a 20-second video sitting there in the Getting Started guide that talks about the why or take their next step and the value they'll get. Yeah. And we'll go and do the video. They'll go and do their UX testing or iteration there, and we'll bring that back together. And that sort of collaboration happens all the time here, which is awesome. Increasingly, it wasn't always that way. And that shared alignment and thinking about yourself, like titles, teams, org structure aside, it's just about like, what are we trying to achieve and what knowledge, skills, or channels do I have available to me versus you? Yeah. And there's lots of great quotes out there about not being able to identify your org structure through your product or through your user experience. Yep. Thinking the product marketing, gap or connection, that's more true than ever.
Cool. Yeah, that's great, and I love that, and I love that. There's kind of that ability to work together and then step away to go do your individual parts and then come back together and remain aligned. So that's great.
What I think is interesting, what Calendly does quite well, before I joined in my first week, I realized they expect everyone to be a master at our own product. And, it's like the McDonald's onboarding, if you work in the corporate team, you have to go and flip burgers for a few weeks and that kind of thing. And lots of companies do this, but it matters a ton because even if I'm not in a customer-facing role, I'm not supporting the org, I don't work in product, the decisions I'm making are so heavily influenced by how the product works, the value of the product, and experiencing that value for yourself, understanding the nuances of where the challenges are. That makes me better at what I do every day. My job could be purely, really traditional marketing, demand gen, or whatever it may be. But I should understand the product end to end, and that helps me be that great partner. I have the same level of product knowledge as many product managers. So when I'm sitting alongside them, sure, I'm looking at it through my marketing or growth lens, but we're both, product masters here on our own product.
Yeah.
And that truly helps.
Yeah. There are a disturbing amount of marketers in SaaS that the extent of their knowledge of the product is what's on the website.
Exactly.
So that's a fantastic point. And I think that pretty well concludes the topic, but I guess before we wrap it up, just, is there anything else you wanted to add or that we didn't get a chance to touch on?
Not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time for content marketing in 2024, and
Yeah.
I know everyone's sitting and watching, and waiting, and it's an interesting time in software. It's challenging out there, right? Building a business used to be the challenge, and now it's about, or building a product rather used to be the challenge, and now it's all about growing and distributing that product,
Yeah.
as being the hardest aspect. So um, it's I think thinking more about growth and product and marketing as one effective function is definitely part of that secret sauce. It certainly is at Calendly, and it's worked well for us so far.
Yeah. That's awesome. I agree. Awesome. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. I appreciate you joining. This has been a really great conversation. For any other podcast episodes, be sure to visit 10speed.io/podcast. Like and subscribe on your platforms of choice, and be sure to subscribe to YouTube channel for full length videos and short clips as well. So, Darren, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us about this today.
Thanks, Nate. Thanks for having me.